The underground auction house sat beneath 300 meters of reinforced concrete and steel, hidden in the commercial district of New Geneva Station. Camilla Thrace had chosen this location specifically because it existed in a legal gray zone where station authority ended and corporate jurisdiction began. Tonight's auction would make her reputation among the galaxy's elite collectors, or destroy her completely. She stood at the entrance, her biometric scanner checking each guest against her encrypted list. 12 buyers had confirmed attendance, each representing different factions across human space. Some wore masks, others arrived with armed escorts. All of them carried enough credit chips to purchase small planets. The auction hall itself was modest, nothing like the grand houses on Earth or Mars. 50 seats arranged in a semicircle, dim, lighting that created shadows in all the right places, and a single display platform where the items would be presented. Camilla had learned long ago that true collectors didn't need luxury. They needed discretion and authenticity. Her assistant, Marcus, approached with a worried expression. He was young, barely 25, but his technical skills made him invaluable for managing the digital side of these events. His hands trembled slightly as he held his datapad. "The final piece just arrived," Marcus whispered. "It's secured in the vault, but Camilla, I'm getting weird signals. Someone's scanning the building. Deep scans, military grade." Camilla felt her stomach tighten. She had anticipated corporate spies and rival collectors trying to gather intelligence. That was normal in this business. But military scans meant something different, something worse. "Run another security sweep," she ordered, keeping her voice calm. "Check all access points and make sure the vault encryption is at maximum." Marcus nodded and disappeared into the back rooms. Camilla returned her attention to the arriving guests. A Martian duchess entered, flanked by 2 bodyguards in crimson armor. Behind her came a wealthy merchant from the Titan colonies, his face scarred from mining accidents in his youth. Each guest was announced only by their bidding number, never their real names. The auction was scheduled to begin in 20 minutes. Camilla walked to the display platform and activated the holographic projector. The first items appeared as 3-dimensional images floating in the air. A ceremonial sword from the First Mars War. A handwritten letter from Admiral Chen, the woman who first established contact with the Centauri colonies. A fragment of the original Armstrong lunar lander. But these were just the opening acts. The real treasure waited in the vault below, locked behind enough security to protect a military base. The late Queen's crown. The actual crown worn by Queen Elizabeth III during humanity's darkest hour, when the alien collective had demanded Earth's surrender. She had worn it during her famous broadcast, the speech that united humanity across every colony and station, the speech that turned certain defeat into stubborn resistance. The crown shouldn't exist anymore. According to official records, it had been destroyed during the bombardment of Windsor Castle. The royal family had never confirmed or denied its survival. For 50 years it had been considered lost, a symbol of human defiance erased by alien weapons. Camilla had spent 3 years tracking down rumors and following leads through black markets and private collections. She had paid bribes, made deals with information brokers, and risked her reputation dozens of times. 6 months ago, she finally found it in the private collection of a deceased admiral's family. They needed money quickly and quietly. She needed the crown. The deal was made. Tonight, she would sell it to the highest bidder. The starting price was set at 50 million credits. She expected it to reach at least 300 million, perhaps more if the bidding became competitive. The guests were all seated now. Camilla dimmed the lights further and stepped onto the platform. She wore a simple black suit, no jewelry, nothing that would distract from the items. In this business, the auctioneer was invisible. Only the treasures mattered. "Welcome," she began, her voice carrying clearly through the small hall. "Tonight, you will have the opportunity to acquire pieces of human history that exist nowhere else. Items that museums don't possess. Artifacts that governments believe are lost. Each item has been authenticated by multiple independent experts. Provenance documentation will be provided to the winning bidders." She launched into the first auction. The ceremonial sword generated enthusiastic bidding, finally selling for 8 million credits to a collector from Europa. The letter from Admiral Chen went for 12 million. The Lander fragment attracted less interest but still sold for $4 million to a museum representative who probably wouldn't admit where he acquired it. After the 10th item sold, Camilla paused. This was the moment. She looked at Marcus, who stood near the vault entrance. He gave her a slight nod. Everything was ready. Our final item tonight, Camilla announced, is something I have waited my entire career to present. Something that should not exist, yet does. Something that represents humanity's finest moment and greatest sacrifice. The holographic display activated. The crown appeared, rotating slowly in the air. It was smaller than most people expected, delicate but unmistakable. Diamonds and sapphires caught the light. The platinum base gleamed with a soft luster, but what made it truly special was visible only to those who knew where to look. Tiny scorch marks along one side where alien energy weapons had nearly vaporized it. A crack in one of the larger diamonds, from the concussive force of the bombardment. These imperfections made it real, made it sacred. The room fell completely silent. Several guests leaned forward in their seats. One woman gasped softly. Even the masked bidders showed their interest through sudden stillness. "The late Queen's crown," Camilla said, worn during the Defiance broadcast, recovered from the ruins of Windsor Castle. Authenticated by 3 independent experts, including Dr. Sarah Morrison of the Royal Historical Society, who examined it personally despite the obvious legal complications. This crown is not just jewelry. It is a symbol of human resistance, of our refusal to surrender, The doors exploded inward. The blast was controlled, professional. It didn't damage the auction hall or harm anyone, but it definitely announced the arrival of unwelcome guests. Camilla spun toward the entrance, her hand instinctively reaching for the small weapon hidden in her jacket. 12 figures in black armor poured through the doorway. Their armor bore no insignia, no national flags or corporate logos. But Camilla recognized the design immediately. Royal Guard, the Queen's own personal security force. Elite soldiers, who answered only to the monarch and operated outside normal military chains of command. The lead soldier removed his helmet. He was older, perhaps 50, with gray hair cut military short and eyes that had seen too many battles. His face was weathered but handsome, with the kind of calm expression that came only from absolute confidence. "This auction is terminated," he announced. His voice carried authority that made Camilla's spine stiffen. "By order of Her Majesty Queen Catherine II, all items present are subject to immediate seizure and investigation. Any person who resists will be detained and charged with trafficking stolen royal property." Camilla's mind raced. The Royal Guard hadn't left Earth in decades. They certainly didn't involve themselves in auction house raids. This was beyond unusual. This was unprecedented. The guests were already moving. Some stood slowly with their hands visible. Others tried to slip toward side exits. The Royal Guards moved with practiced efficiency, blocking every possible escape route. Within seconds, the entire hall was secured. The lead soldier walked directly toward Camilla. His eyes never left hers as he crossed the room. When he reached the platform, he stopped just close enough to be intimidating without being physically threatening. "Camilla Thrace," he said. It wasn't a question. "You are in possession of property belonging to the crown. That property will be returned immediately. Cooperate, and this ends peacefully. Resist, and I assure you the consequences will be severe." Camilla fought to keep her voice steady. "I don't know what you're talking about. These are legally acquired artifacts from private collections. I have documentation for everything." The soldier smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "The late Queen's crown was never private property, Ms. Thrace. It was never sold. It was never abandoned. It belongs to the crown, now and forever. Taking it was theft. Selling it is treason. Now you will take me to the vault, or my soldiers will tear this facility apart until we find it ourselves." Camilla glanced at Marcus. Her assistant looked terrified, his face pale in the dim lighting. The guests sat frozen in their seats watching this confrontation unfold. Several of them probably had their own legal problems now. Being present at an auction selling stolen royal property could destroy reputations and end careers. She had 2 choices: Surrender the crown and lose everything she had worked for, or try to fight and definitely lose everything while also ending up in a military prison. Before she could decide, the soldier stepped closer and lowered his voice so only she could hear. You found something that was hidden for good reason, Ms. Thrace. There are secrets connected to that crown. Secrets that could destabilize governments and restart wars. You think you're selling history, but you're actually threatening the future. Now take me to the vault, Camilla F. Camilla led the soldier through the back corridor toward the vault. Her mind calculated escape options, but with 12 royal guards securing the building, none seemed viable. The soldier walked 2 steps behind her, close enough to react if she tried anything stupid. Marcus followed them, still clutching his datapad. He kept glancing at the soldier with wide eyes, probably wondering how their careers had gone from successful auction dealers to potential prisoners in less than 5 minutes. The vault door was military grade, something Camilla had purchased from a decommissioned space station. It required 3 separate authentication methods, including retinal scan, voice recognition, and a 20-digit code that changed every hour. She had always been proud of this security system. Now it seemed almost childish compared to the threat walking behind her. Open it, the soldier commanded. Camilla approached the scanner. Her hand trembled slightly as she placed her palm on the reader. She steadied herself and began the authentication sequence. The scanner verified her identity. The voice recognition accepted her passphrase. She entered the hourly code. The vault door hissed and began to slide open. Heavy hydraulics moved tons of reinforced steel. Inside, the vault was small, just 3 meters by 3 meters, with climate control and shock absorption systems. A single display case sat in the center under protective lighting. The crown rested on red velvet inside the case. Even in the harsh vault lighting, it looked magnificent. The diamonds caught and scattered light in patterns that seemed almost alive. The platinum gleamed with that unique luster that only centuries of careful preservation could create. The soldier stepped past Camilla and approached the case. He stared at the crown for a long moment without speaking. His expression changed, became something almost like sadness. When he finally spoke, his voice was quieter. Do you know what you really found, Ms. Thrace? A crown worn by a queen during a famous speech, Camilla answered carefully. A symbol of human defiance during the collective war. That's what everyone believes, the soldier said. He reached out but didn't touch the case. The truth is more complicated and more dangerous. He turned to face her directly. My name is Commander James Hartford. I've served the crown for 32 years. I was there in the bunker beneath Windsor Castle when Queen Elizabeth III made her broadcast. I was standing 15 meters away when she wore this crown and told humanity to keep fighting. What I'm about to tell you is classified at the highest level. You will never repeat it. If you do, I will deny everything and you will be arrested for spreading false information. Do you understand? Camilla nodded slowly. Marcus had gone completely still, barely breathing. Commander Hartford continued. The collective didn't just want Earth's surrender. They wanted something specific. Information encoded in human historical artifacts. The crown was one of several items they specifically demanded we hand over. They claimed it contained data about human evolution that violated galactic law. That's ridiculous, Camilla said. It's just a crown. There's no data storage. There is, Hartford interrupted. Woven into the crown structure at the molecular level. Information encoded by someone centuries ago. Maybe longer. We don't know who did it or exactly when. But the collective knew about it. They wanted it. And Queen Elizabeth refused to give it to them. Camilla felt her understanding of reality shift. This wasn't possible. Molecular data storage in a crown that was hundreds of years old. Who would have had that technology? Why would they encode information in royal jewelry? What kind of information? Marcus asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Hartford looked at the young man. We don't know exactly. Our best scientists tried to decode it after the war. They confirmed the data exists but couldn't fully translate it. What they did learn was disturbing. The information seems to be a record, a history, something about humanity's real origin, something that suggests we're not what we think we are. You're saying humanity isn't from Earth? Camilla asked. I'm saying the data in that crown tells a different story than what we teach in schools, Hartford replied. A story that suggests human beings were placed on Earth deliberately. By someone. For a purpose. The collective knows this story. They wanted to destroy the evidence. Queen Elizabeth made sure they couldn't have it. Camilla's hands felt cold. She had spent years tracking down this crown because of its historical significance. She had never imagined it might contain actual proof of something that would rewrite human history. Why didn't the Queen destroy it? She asked. If it's that dangerous? Because she believed humanity deserved to know the truth eventually, Hartford said. But not during a war. Not when we were barely surviving. The knowledge could have torn us apart. Different factions would have used it for power. Religious groups would have gone to war over the implications. She decided to hide it until humanity was ready. And now? Camilla asked. Now someone found it. Hartford gestured at her. Which means others will find it too. The collective has informants throughout human space. They'll know you had this crown. They'll know about this auction. Which means they'll come for it. And they won't be as polite as we are. Marcus made a small sound of fear. Camilla wanted to make the same sound but forced herself to stay calm. So what happens now? She asked. Hartford opened a communication device on his wrist. We take the crown back to Earth. We return it to Crown Security where it belongs. And you forget this entire night ever happened. That's it? Camilla couldn't keep the disbelief from her voice. You raid my auction? Tell me the crown contains proof that humanity's entire history is a lie and then just leave? What did you expect? Hartford asked. Prison? Execution? You didn't know what you had. You were just doing business. Illegal business, yes, but not maliciously. The Crown has bigger concerns than punishing every artifact dealer who crosses legal boundaries. He stepped closer to her. But understand this clearly. If you ever speak about what I told you tonight, if you ever try to find another artifact like this one, if you ever put Crown security at risk again, the response will be very different. Am I clear? Camilla nodded. She believed him completely. This man had the authority and willingness to make her disappear if necessary. Hartford turned back to the display case. He entered a code on his own device and the case's security system deactivated. He carefully lifted the crown, handling it with reverence that went beyond professional duty. This was personal for him. He had known the Queen who wore it. He had been there during humanity's darkest moment. There's one more thing you should know, Hartford said, still holding the crown. The Queen's broadcast during the war, the speech that united humanity, she didn't write it herself. The words came from the data in this crown. Somehow when she put it on, she knew what to say, like the crown itself was guiding her. Our scientists confirmed there's some kind of interface. Some way the encoded information can be accessed by a human wearing it. That's impossible, Marcus said. Many things are impossible until they happen, Hartford replied. He carefully placed the crown in a protective container that one of his soldiers brought forward. The container sealed with a hiss, its interior filled with inert gas to prevent any degradation. As Hartford prepared to leave, Camilla felt compelled to ask one more question. Commander, what do you think the truth is? About humanity? About where we really came from? Hartford paused at the vault entrance. He looked at her with those battle-worn eyes. I think we're an experiment. I think someone very powerful placed us on Earth to see what we would become. I think they're still watching. And I think the collective knows this and fears us because of it. Humanity isn't just another species. We're something else. Something that scares a civilization thousands of years more advanced than us. Why would we scare them? Camilla asked. Because experiments sometimes exceed their creators' expectations, Hartford said. Because humanity has something the collective doesn't have. Something that might make us more dangerous than any weapon or technology. We have potential they can't predict or control. With that, he left the vault. His soldiers followed, carrying the sealed container. Within minutes, the auction hall was empty except for Camilla, Marcus, and the confused guests who were still being processed by the remaining guards. Camilla sat down on the vault floor. Her legs felt weak. Marcus sat beside her, his data pad forgotten in his lap. What do we do now? Marcus asked. Camilla thought about that question. What did you do after learning your entire species might be a planted experiment? After discovering that human history was built on a foundation of carefully maintained lies? After finding out the universe was far stranger and more dangerous than anyone admitted? We survive, Camilla said finally. We keep doing what we do. We find artifacts. We preserve history. And we remember what Commander Hartford told us. Which part? Marcus asked. The part about humanity having potential the collective can't control, Camilla said. That means we're dangerous. That means we matter. And that means whatever truth is hidden in that crown, it's worth protecting. She stood up and extended a hand to Marcus. Come on, we need to deal with those guests. And then we need to completely erase every record of tonight's auction. Hartford might be letting us go, but there will be others asking questions. We need to be ready. 3 weeks passed before Camilla felt safe again. The auction house remained closed. She told clients that she was restructuring her business operations. In reality, she was watching every shadow, monitoring every communication channel, waiting for the consequences of that night to catch up with her. But nothing happened. No collective agents appeared. No government officials came asking questions. The guests from the auction had all been released after signing comprehensive non-disclosure agreements, backed by threats severe enough to ensure silence. Commander Hartford and his royal guards had vanished as completely as they had arrived. Camilla sat in her apartment on New Geneva Station, reviewing the data she had collected about the crown during her years of searching for it. Every reference she had found, every rumor she had traced, every expert she had consulted. She was supposed to delete all of it, erase every connection between herself and the late Queen's crown. Instead, she was reading through it again, trying to understand what she had really found. Marcus arrived at her door carrying coffee and looking nervous. He always looked nervous now. The encounter with the royal guard had changed him, made him jumpy. He saw threats everywhere. You're still researching, Marcus said. It wasn't a question. He set the coffee down and sat across from her. Camilla, this is dangerous. Hartford told us to forget about it. Hartford told us not to speak about it, Camilla corrected. He didn't say we couldn't think about it. Besides, I can't just forget. Can you? Marcus was quiet for a moment. No, he admitted. I keep thinking about what he said. About humanity being an experiment. About the collective being afraid of us. It doesn't make sense. Unless it's true, Camilla said. She pulled up a holographic display between them. Images appeared in the air. Documents and photographs she had collected. I've been going through everything again, looking at it differently now that I know what to look for. And I found something interesting. She expanded one image. It showed an ancient text, something from Earth's pre-space age. Religious writings from multiple cultures. She highlighted specific passages. Look at these creation myths, Camilla said. Almost every ancient culture has a story about gods or advanced beings creating humanity. We always assumed these were just myths, attempts by primitive people to explain their existence. But what if they weren't myths? What if they were memories, racial memories passed down through generations? Marcus leaned forward, studying the texts. You're saying ancient humans actually met whoever created us? I'm saying it's possible, Camilla replied. And if it's true, then maybe the information in the crown isn't just data. Maybe it's a message, instructions, a purpose statement. Purpose for what? Marcus asked. That's what I want to find out, Camilla said. She closed the display and looked at Marcus seriously. I know this is dangerous. I know we should probably leave it alone. But Hartford said something that keeps bothering me. He said humanity scares the collective because we have potential they can't predict. What potential? What makes us so different from every other species? Marcus considered the question. Humans are stubborn, he said slowly. We don't give up, even when we should. During the collective war, every military strategist said we would lose. Every projection showed total defeat. But we kept fighting anyway. We won because we refused to accept the logical outcome. Exactly, Camilla said. Humanity is irrational. We do things that don't make sense. We take risks no other species would take. We fight battles we can't win and somehow win them anyway. What if that's the point? What if whoever created us designed us to be unpredictable? Why would anyone want that? Marcus asked. Because predictability is a weakness, Camilla said. The collective is thousands of years ahead of us technologically. But their society is based on logic and calculation. They do what makes sense. What's efficient? What's predictable? Humanity doesn't work that way. We're creative in ways that logic can't anticipate. We find solutions that shouldn't exist. We're chaos in a universe that runs on order. She stood and walked to her window. New Geneva Station spread out below her, a massive structure housing 3 million people. Ships came and went constantly. Humans spreading across the galaxy despite having the slowest faster-than-light technology and the weakest military. They spread because they were stubborn and irrational and refused to accept limits. I think whoever created us made us to be disruptive. Camilla continued. They put us in a universe dominated by ordered logical species and gave us the ability to break their patterns. The collective fears us because we're unpredictable, because we might do something they can't calculate or control. Marcus joined her at the window. If that's true, then the crown might contain instructions on how to use that potential, how to maximize whatever advantage we were designed to have. Yes, Camilla said, and the collective wants to destroy that information before we learn how to use it properly. They stood in silence for a moment, watching ships move through the station's docking bays. Finally, Marcus spoke quietly. What are we going to do? Camilla had been asking herself that question for 3 weeks. She had built her career on finding and selling historical artifacts. She understood how to navigate the gray areas of law, how to work with collectors who valued discretion, how to authenticate items that officially didn't exist. But this was different. This wasn't just history. This was active, dangerous knowledge that could change everything. I want to find out if there are other artifacts, Camilla said. Not to sell them, just to document them, to understand what message they contain. If humanity really was designed for a purpose, don't we deserve to know what that purpose is? Hartford will stop us, Marcus said. Hartford is loyal to the crown, Camilla replied. His job is to protect royal secrets, but he's also human. I saw it in his eyes when he talked about the crown. He wants to know the truth too. He's just too disciplined to pursue it. She turned away from the window and faced Marcus. I'm not asking you to help me with this. It's dangerous and probably illegal. But I can't let it go. I need to know what we really are. Marcus smiled slightly. You're being irrational again. Pursuing something dangerous for no practical benefit. Taking a risk that doesn't make sense. Exactly, Camilla said. I'm being human. Then I guess I'll be irrational too, Marcus said. Where do we start? Camilla returned to her desk and pulled up a different set of files. I've been tracking something for years. Rumors about other artifacts with unusual properties. A sword that supposedly guides whoever holds it. A book that changes its contents based on who reads it. A medallion that survivors of the collective war say helped them make impossible decisions. You think these all contain encoded information like the crown? Marcus asked. I think they might, Camilla said. And I think someone has been collecting them. Moving them around. Keeping them hidden but not destroyed. There's a pattern to the movements. A coordination that suggests purpose. She expanded a star map showing various human colonies and stations. Dozens of points were marked across the map. Each of these marks a location where one of these artifacts was reported. Watch what happens when I show their movement over time. The marks began to move, creating paths across the map. Over decades, the artifacts had been systematically moved from outer colonies toward Earth. Not directly, but gradually. One transfer at a time, hidden in legitimate trade, disguised as ordinary antiques. Someone is gathering them, Marcus said, studying the pattern. Moving them all toward one location. Earth, Camilla confirmed. Specifically, they're all moving toward England. Toward Crown territory. You think the Royal Guard is collecting these artifacts? Marcus asked. I think the Crown has been collecting them for centuries, Camilla said. Long before the collective war. Maybe since these artifacts were first created. The Crown knows what they are, what they contain. Hartford admitted as much when he said Queen Elizabeth refused to give up the crown. She knew what it was worth, what it represented. Marcus processed this information. So the British monarchy has been the guardian of humanity's real history this entire time. Perhaps not just the British monarchy, Camilla said. Maybe other institutions too, churches, secret societies, academic organizations. Anyone who might have access to ancient artifacts and the resources to protect them. The pattern goes back further than any single government. She closed the star map and pulled up a different image. It showed an old photograph from Earth, taken in the early 21st century. A museum in London. The image focused on a small exhibition of royal jewelry. This photograph was taken 60 years before the collective war, Camilla explained. See that necklace in the display case? According to the museum's records, it belonged to Queen Victoria. Supposedly just a pretty piece of jewelry with historical significance. She zoomed in on the necklace. Even in the old photograph, something about it seemed unusual. The way it caught light. The pattern of the gems. I found references to this necklace in 3 different historical texts, Camilla continued. Each time, the writer mentions that Queen Victoria wore it during critical. Earth looked different than Camilla expected. She had seen thousands of images, watched countless videos. But actually approaching the planet was overwhelming. The blue and green sphere hung against the black of space like a jewel. Despite centuries of human expansion across the galaxy, Earth remained the center. The heart. Home. The transport ship descended through layers of orbital defenses that would have made any military station jealous. After the collective war, Earth's security had been reinforced to levels that seemed almost paranoid. Ships were scanned multiple times, every passenger verified against countless databases. Any anomaly resulted in immediate quarantine and investigation. Camilla and Marcus passed through customs without incident. Their cover story was simple and believable. They were historical consultants doing research for a documentary about pre-space artifacts. They had legitimate credentials, established reputations, and enough real projects in their history to withstand scrutiny. London was colder than Camilla anticipated. Growing up on stations with controlled climates, she had never experienced actual weather. The damp air and gray clouds felt alien and uncomfortable. But the city itself was magnificent. Ancient buildings stood alongside modern structures. History lived here in ways it couldn't on colonies that were only decades old. Their hotel was modest, chosen specifically because it wouldn't attract attention. Wealthy consultants would stay at luxury accommodations. They needed to appear professional but not remarkable. Marcus spent the first 2 days establishing their research credentials. He visited museums, spoke with historians, asked questions that consultants would ask. He built a trail of legitimate activity that would support their cover story if anyone checked. Meanwhile, Camilla worked on the real problem, finding Crown Security's artifact storage facility. She started with public records, government buildings, royal properties, historic sites connected to the monarchy. None of them showed signs of the kind of security that would be necessary for storing artifacts containing dangerous information. They were too visible, too accessible, too obvious. Then she looked at locations that weren't public, private estates owned by the Crown, properties that appeared in historical records but not tourist guides, places that existed in legal gray areas where public access wasn't guaranteed or even discussed. One property kept appearing in obscure references. Ashford House, located 40 kilometers outside London in the countryside. Built in the 15th century, officially listed as a historical monument under permanent restoration. No public tours. No photographs allowed. Security provided by private contractors with military backgrounds. Camilla researched the property's history. It had been owned by various noble families over the centuries, always passing between relatives of the royal family. During World War II, it had been used as a secure communication facility. During the collective war, it showed up in encrypted military logistics reports before those reports became classified. The property's official purpose was storage of sensitive historical documents. But when Camilla tried to find specifics about what documents were stored there, the information didn't exist. The facility was maintained by a private trust with funding that came from sources so complicated that tracing them required forensic accounting skills she didn't possess. Everything about Ashford House suggested it was exactly what she was looking for. A secure facility where artifacts could be protected indefinitely, remote enough to avoid casual attention, connected enough to receive resources and personnel without raising questions. The problem was gaining access. The facility wasn't open to researchers or historians. Requests for access were politely declined with references to restoration work and security protocols. Even legitimate scholars with impeccable credentials were turned away. Camilla needed a different approach. She needed someone who could authorize access, someone inside the system who had authority and reason to visit the facility. That's when she thought of Commander Hartford. The idea was audacious and probably stupid. Hartford had warned her to stay away from Crown secrets. Contacting him would definitely violate that warning. But he was also someone who understood the importance of what she was looking for, someone who had served humanity during its darkest hour, someone who might, possibly, want the truth to be known. She spent 3 days trying to find a way to contact Hartford without triggering security alerts. The Royal Guard didn't have public communication channels. They operated through encrypted networks that civilians couldn't access. Finally, she found an indirect approach. A small memorial in London dedicated to soldiers who had died during the collective war. The memorial was maintained by a veterans organization that had connections to active military personnel. She went to the memorial and left a message with the staff. A request to speak with Commander James Hartford about consulting for a historical documentary. It was a long shot. Hartford probably received hundreds of such requests. He would likely ignore it or have an aide send a polite refusal. 2 days later, Marcus received a message on his secured communication device. A simple text. Meeting location and time. Nothing else. The meeting place was a pub in a quiet part of London. Old wood interior, low lighting, the kind of place where people came to drink and forget, not to be seen or remembered. Camilla arrived exactly on time and found Hartford sitting in a corner booth, wearing civilian clothes and looking tired. He didn't smile when she sat down. His expression was controlled, neutral, but she could see anger behind his eyes. "You were told to forget about the crown," Hartford said without preamble. "Coming to Earth was spectacularly stupid. What makes you think I won't have you arrested right now?" "Because you want to know why I'm here," Camilla said. "You're curious. That's why you agreed to this meeting instead of sending security to my hotel." Hartford took a drink from his glass. "Whiskey from the smell?" "You have 5 minutes. Explain why you're on Earth before I decide you're a security threat." Camilla glanced around the pub. It was mostly empty. No one paying attention to them. She leaned forward and spoke quietly. "You told me the crown contains information about humanity's origin. Information that could destabilize governments. But you also said Queen Elizabeth believed humanity deserved to know the truth eventually. I want to know when eventually becomes now. When does humanity get to learn what we really are?" "When we're ready," Hartford said. "And who decides when we're ready?" Camilla challenged. "The crown? The government? People who benefit from keeping humanity ignorant about its own history?" Hartford's expression hardened. "You think this is about power? About control? You have no idea what's at stake. The information in that crown and others like it isn't just historical, it's operational. Instructions, protocols, things that could be activated if someone knew how to interpret them correctly." "Activated how?" Camilla asked. "What kind of protocols?" Hartford was quiet for a long moment. He finished his drink and signaled for another. When the bartender brought it, he waited until the man was out of earshot. "The artifacts aren't just storage devices," Hartford said finally. "They're interfaces. Ways to access something larger, something we don't fully understand. Queen Elizabeth accessed it when she wore the crown. She said it was like connecting to a vast network of information, knowledge that had been waiting for humanity to reach a certain level of development." "What kind of knowledge?" Camilla pressed. "Everything," Hartford said. "Technology, history, purpose." She said it was like remembering something she had always known but forgotten. Like humanity has collective knowledge that's been locked away, waiting for the right circumstances to be accessed. Camilla felt her heartbeat accelerate. "And the collective knows about this?" "The collective discovered it before we did," Hartford confirmed. "They found artifacts on other worlds. Learned that humanity was seeded across multiple locations, that we're not natural evolution. We're a designed species with programmed potential. They tried to eliminate us before that potential could be realized. They failed because Queen Elizabeth accessed enough of the knowledge to guide humanity through the war." "Then why hide it now?" Camilla asked. "If that knowledge helped us survive, why not share it with everyone?" "Because not everyone can handle it," Hartford said. "The knowledge doesn't come all at once. It unfolds based on who accesses it and under what circumstances. Queen Elizabeth was prepared, trained. She had spent decades studying the crown before she actually wore it. When she finally connected to the network, she understood how to use what she learned without being overwhelmed." He looked at Camilla intently. "Do you understand what I'm telling you? This isn't information you can simply read in a book. It's experiential, direct, overwhelming. People who aren't prepared have gone mad from connecting to it. We have documented cases of individuals who found artifacts, tried to use them, and suffered complete psychological breaks. The knowledge is real, but accessing it improperly is dangerous." Camilla absorbed this information. Everything Hartford was saying should have sounded like insanity. But it explained too much. The secrecy, the protection, the fear. "How many artifacts exist?" she asked. "We know of 47. The morning of their appointment at Ashford House arrived with typical English weather. Rain fell steadily from gray clouds, turning the countryside into a watercolor painting of greens and browns. Camilla and Marcus sat in the back of an automated vehicle that Hartford had arranged, watching the landscape pass by. Marcus had spent the previous 3 days oscillating between excitement and terror. He understood the significance of what they were about to see, but he also understood the danger. One mistake, one wrong word, and their lives would change permanently. "Remember the rules," Camilla said for the 3rd time. "We document only what Hartford permits. We don't touch anything. We don't ask questions about operational details. We're researchers studying historical artifacts, nothing more." "And if we see something that proves humanity was designed by someone?" Marcus asked. "Something that could rewrite every history book ever written? We just document it calmly like we're cataloging furniture?" "Exactly," Camilla said. "We stay professional. We stay controlled. Getting emotional or excited will only make them nervous." The vehicle turned off the main road onto a private lane. Trees lined both sides, their branches forming a canopy overhead. After 2 kilometers, they reached a gate. The vehicle stopped while sensors scanned it thoroughly. Camilla saw at least 6 separate security devices examining them. Cameras, bioscanners, probably weapon systems hidden in the trees. The gate opened and they continued toward Ashford House. The building appeared gradually through the rain and trees. It was smaller than Camilla expected. 3 stories of stone and timber, with architectural styles that spanned centuries. Parts of the original 15th century construction remained visible, integrated with renovations from different eras. They stopped in front of the main entrance. Commander Hartford waited there, wearing full Royal Guard uniform this time. 2 other soldiers stood with him, both armed and alert. "Ms. Thrace, Mr. Chen," Hartford greeted them formally. "Welcome to Ashford House. Before we proceed, I need to establish the parameters of your visit. You will be under constant observation. All recording devices you bring must be approved. Any attempt to access restricted areas or touch artifacts without permission will result in immediate termination of this visit and criminal charges. Do you accept these terms?" "We accept," Camilla said. "Then please follow me," Hartford said. They entered through heavy wooden doors into a foyer that looked like a normal historical home. Antique furniture, paintings on the walls, thick carpets that muffled footsteps. But Camilla noticed details that revealed the truth. Sophisticated sensors embedded in the walls, security systems disguised as light fixtures, reinforced door frames that could seal sections of the building instantly. Hartford led them through several rooms, each one looking increasingly secure despite maintaining historical appearances. They descended stairs to a lower level where the pretense of normalcy disappeared completely. The walls became reinforced concrete. The lighting changed to harsh fluorescence. Security checkpoints required biometric authentication. Finally, they reached a large steel door. Hartford entered a complex code and submitted to multiple identity verifications. The door opened with a heavy mechanical sound. The room beyond was vast, much larger than seemed possible based on the building's exterior dimensions. The space had been excavated deep into the earth, creating a chamber that stretched 50 meters in every direction. Climate control systems hummed constantly. The air tasted filtered and slightly metallic. Display cases lined the walls and filled the center of the room. Each case contained an artifact. Camilla counted quickly. At least 40 objects, each one carefully preserved and protected. "This is the Crown's collection," Hartford said quietly. "Everything we've recovered over the past century and a half. Each item is an access point to what we call the archive, the network of information that was embedded in human artifacts long before humanity had the technology to create such things." Camilla approached the nearest display case slowly. Inside was a sword, ancient and beautiful. The blade showed wear from actual combat. The hilt was wrapped in faded leather, but even through the protective glass, something about it seemed unusual. The metal had a quality that suggested it was more than simple steel. "The sword of Charlemagne," Hartford explained. "Historical records say it was lost in the 9th century. We recovered it from a private collector in 2089. Initial analysis confirmed it contains the same molecular encoding as the crown, when held by someone prepared to access it. The sword provides tactical knowledge, strategy, the ability to see patterns in chaos that would be invisible to normal perception." Marcus was staring at a different case. Inside was a book, its pages yellowed with age. The text appeared to be Latin, but even from a distance, Camilla could see that the letters seemed to shift slightly when viewed from different angles. "The Codex Mysterium," Hartford said, "supposedly written by an unknown monk in the 12th century. The text changes based on who reads it. Different people see different words, different information. We've had linguists study it for years without fully understanding how it works. Camilla moved from case to case, documenting everything with the approved recording equipment Hartford had provided. Each artifact was remarkable. A medallion worn by Joan of Arc, a set of tools that belonged to Leonardo da Vinci, a compass that Captain Cook carried during his voyages, objects from different eras and cultures, all connected by the same impossible technology. How is this possible? Marcus asked, his voice filled with awe. How could artifacts from centuries ago contain information storage that we're only beginning to understand now? Because they were placed here deliberately, Hartford answered, by whoever created humanity. They seeded these artifacts throughout human history, knowing that eventually we would find them, that eventually we would be ready to access the information they contained. Camilla stopped in front of a case that held the late Queen's crown. Seeing it again sent a chill through her. The crown that had started this entire journey. The artifact that had brought her to this impossible room full of impossible objects. Why did they do it? Camilla asked. Whoever created us. Why make us? Why give us this information? Hartford walked to stand beside her. That's the question Queen Elizabeth spent her life trying to answer. She accessed the archive more deeply than anyone before or since. She said the information suggested humanity was created as an experiment in creative chaos, a species designed to be unpredictable in a universe dominated by predictable, logical species. The collective, Marcus said, understanding dawning on his face. You said they fear us. They fear humanity because we break their predictions. We do things that don't make sense. Exactly, Hartford confirmed. The collective and species like them evolved naturally. Their civilizations developed through logical progression. Efficient, orderly, predictable. They've spread across the galaxy using mathematics and reason. They can calculate outcomes centuries in advance because everyone in their civilization acts logically. He gestured at the artifacts around them. Then humanity appears. A species that shouldn't exist. A species that was placed in the galaxy deliberately. We're irrational. We take risks. We create art and music that serves no survival purpose. We fight battles we can't win. We refuse to accept defeat even when logic says we should. We're chaos incarnate, and the collective can't predict chaos. Camilla processed this information while staring at the crown. And the archive contains instructions on how to use that chaos effectively? More than instructions, Hartford said. It contains knowledge that was programmed into humanity at a genetic level but locked away. Potential that exists in every human, but can't be accessed without these artifacts. Queen Elizabeth said it was like remembering something she had always known. Abilities and understanding that were always part of her but dormant until the crown activated them. What kind of abilities? Camilla asked. Hartford hesitated. Then he seemed to make a decision. He walked to a control panel on the wall and entered a command. One of the display cases opened, the protective glass sliding away. The rules said you couldn't touch the artifacts, Hartford said. But perhaps some rules need to be broken. Perhaps the only way to truly understand is through direct experience. He reached into the case and carefully removed a small object. A ring, simple silver with a single blue stone. He held it out to Camilla. This belonged to Marie Curie, Hartford explained. It's one of the safer artifacts. The archive access it provides is limited, focused on scientific understanding rather than broader knowledge. If you're willing, you can try wearing it, experience what these artifacts actually do. Camilla stared at the ring. This was far beyond what she had expected, beyond what she had prepared for. Wearing the ring meant accessing whatever information it contained, connecting directly to the archive that Hartford described. What if I can't handle it? She asked. You said people have gone mad from accessing this knowledge improperly. That's possible, Hartford admitted. But you've spent years studying these artifacts. You understand what they are. Even if you didn't know the full details, you're as prepared as anyone can be without formal training. And this particular artifact is gentle. It won't overwhelm you. It will simply show you enough to understand. The journey back to London happened in silence. Camilla and Marcus sat in the automated vehicle, both processing what they had experienced at Ashford House. The rain had stopped, and sunlight broke through the clouds in scattered beams that painted the countryside in gold. Marcus finally spoke. We can't just keep this secret. People deserve to know these artifacts exist. That humanity has access to knowledge that could change everything. Hartford knows that, Camilla said. That's why he showed us. He's preparing for disclosure, preparing humanity to learn the truth. But when? Marcus pressed. How long do we wait? How much longer does humanity fumble in the dark when we have access to light? Camilla didn't have an answer. She understood Hartford's caution. The knowledge in the archive was powerful and potentially dangerous. Releasing it without proper preparation could cause chaos, religious upheaval, political instability, wars between factions fighting over access to the artifacts. But keeping it secret also had costs. Humanity could be advancing faster, learning more, becoming stronger. Every day the artifacts remained hidden was a day humanity remained less than what they could be. When they reached their hotel, Camilla found a message waiting on her secure communication device. It was from Hartford, text only. Tomorrow, 10 a.m., British Museum, private gallery. Come alone. Camilla showed the message to Marcus. Her assistant frowned. Why alone? What doesn't he want me to see? I don't know, Camilla admitted. But after what he showed us today, I trust him. He's not hiding things maliciously. He's protecting something. The next morning, Camilla arrived at the British Museum exactly at 10. The building was magnificent, full of human history from across millennia and across the world. Artifacts that told the story of human civilization filled countless galleries. A museum security guard met her at the entrance. He didn't speak, just gestured for her to follow. They walked through public galleries filled with tourists, then through a door marked for staff only, down corridors that became progressively more secure until they reached a small private gallery. Hartford waited inside. He wore civilian clothes again, looking tired as if he hadn't slept well. The gallery contained a single display case. Inside was a book, ancient and fragile-looking with a worn leather cover. Thank you for coming, Hartford said. What I'm about to show you cannot be documented. Cannot be shared with Mr. Chen or anyone else. This information is so sensitive that only 3 people in human space currently know it. After today, you'll be the 4th. Camilla felt nervous suddenly. Commander, maybe I shouldn't... You need to know, Hartford interrupted. Because I'm going to ask you to do something dangerous. Something that could change human history. And you deserve to understand exactly what you're agreeing to before you decide. He gestured to the book in the display case. This is the Founder's Journal, the oldest artifact in the Crown's collection. It was written in 1452 by a man named Thomas Grey. He was a minor noble who lived near London, unremarkable by historical accounts. Except that he found something. An object that predated human civilization. An object that gave him access to the archive before anyone else in human history. Hartford opened the case carefully and removed the book. He handled it with reverence that went beyond professional care. This was personal for him. Thomas Grey wrote this journal to document what he learned, Hartford continued. He accessed the archive deeply, more deeply than Queen Elizabeth centuries later. He learned things about humanity that he believed should be preserved. And he wrote it all here, in coded language that only someone with archive access could fully understand. He opened the book to a specific page. The text was in medieval English, difficult to read. But Camilla could see that certain words were emphasized, marked in ways that suggested importance beyond simple documentation. According to Thomas Gray's journal, humanity was created by a species called the Founders, Hartford explained. They were beings of immense power and technology. They seeded humanity on Earth approximately 200,000 years ago, not as slaves or servants, but as an experiment in consciousness. They wanted to see what would happen if they created a species without the limitations that other intelligent species had developed. What limitations? Camilla asked. Logic, Hartford said simply. Every other species in the galaxy evolved to favor logical thinking, efficiency, order, predictability. These traits are useful for survival and technological advancement. But they create a ceiling, a limit to how creative a species can be, how adaptable, how innovative. He turned the page to show more text. The Founders created humanity without that ceiling. They gave us imagination, creativity, the ability to believe in impossible things and then make them real. They made us irrational on purpose, made us capable of emotions and thoughts that don't follow pure logic, and then they left us alone to develop naturally. Why? Camilla asked. What was the purpose? Thomas Grey spent years trying to answer that question, Hartford said. His journal suggests the founders believed the universe needed chaos, that a galaxy full of logical, predictable species was stagnating, becoming static. They needed something to disrupt the pattern, something unpredictable enough to force change and evolution across the entire galactic community. Hartford closed the book and held it carefully. Humanity is that disruption. We're meant to be the variable that changes everything, the species that forces other civilizations to adapt or die. That's why the collective fears us. Not because we're stronger or more advanced, but because we're unpredictable. We break their calculations. We do things they can't anticipate. Camilla tried to process this information. It aligned with everything Hartford had told her before, but the implications were staggering. Humanity wasn't just an experiment. They were a weapon, a tool designed to disrupt galactic civilization. Does the collective know this? She asked. They know enough to fear us, Hartford replied. They found their own founder artifacts, learned their own pieces of the truth. That's why they tried to eliminate humanity during the war. They understood what we could become, what we're meant to become, and they wanted to destroy us before we reached that potential. He set the book down on a nearby table and looked at Camilla intently. The Crown has protected these artifacts and this knowledge for centuries because we understood the danger. If humanity learned the truth before we were ready, it could destroy us. Some people would embrace our purpose. Others would reject it violently. We could tear ourselves apart fighting over what the founders meant for us to be. But you're telling me now, Camilla said. Why? What's changed? Hartford pulled out a data pad and showed her a series of reports. Military intelligence, diplomatic communications, analysis from frontier colonies. The collective is mobilizing again, Hartford explained. Not openly, not with declarations of war, but they're moving resources toward human space, building up military assets, making diplomatic overtures that are actually reconnaissance missions. They're preparing something. Camilla scanned the reports quickly. Hartford was right. The pattern was clear once you knew what to look for. The collective was positioning itself for action against humanity. They're going to attack again, she said. Eventually, yes, Hartford confirmed, but not immediately. They're still afraid of us, still uncertain about what humanity might do if pushed. They're gathering information, trying to understand our capabilities better, trying to predict how we'll respond. He took the data pad back, which brings me to why I brought you here, why I showed you the Founders' Journal. The Crown has decided that humanity needs to accelerate our access to the archive. We need to unlock more of our potential before the collective makes their move. We need people who can access the artifacts, who can handle the knowledge without breaking, who can help guide humanity to what we're meant to become. You want me to access the artifacts? Camilla said, understanding dawning. To learn more from the archive. To become someone who can handle that knowledge. Not just you, Hartford said. We need a network of people. Individuals across human space who can access the archive and help distribute the knowledge carefully. People who understand the danger but also understand the necessity. You found the late Queen's crown. You tracked it for years despite the difficulty and danger. You came to Earth seeking answers despite warnings. You're exactly the kind of person we need. Camilla felt overwhelmed. This was so much bigger than artifact dealing. Hartford was asking her to become part of the plan to transform humanity, to help unlock the potential the founders had built into human DNA. What would I have to do? She asked. Train, Hartford said. Learn to access the archive safely. Study the artifacts under supervision. Develop the mental discipline to handle large amounts of information without being overwhelmed. It would take months, maybe years, but eventually, you would be able to access significant portions of the archive, to learn what the founders intended for humanity, to help others learn safely, he paused. And then you would help us prepare humanity for what's coming. You would document the artifacts publicly, write about them, create educational materials, begin the process of disclosure in a way that doesn't cause panic or chaos. The Crown would allow public disclosure? Camilla asked, surprised. 6 months later, Camilla stood on a stage in Geneva, facing an audience of 200 journalists from across human space. Behind her, massive screens displayed images of the artifacts from Ashford House, the late Queen's crown, the sword of Charlemagne, Marie Curie's ring. Dozens of others, each one documented and authenticated. This was the moment. The disclosure Hartford had promised. The careful, controlled release of information that would change human understanding of their own history. Marcus sat in the front row, providing technical support for the presentation. Over the past months, he had become an expert in the artifacts, learning to document them in ways that made the information accessible without being overwhelming. He had also begun his own training, accessing the archive through carefully selected artifacts under Hartford's supervision. The training had been intense for both of them, learning to open their minds to the archive without being overwhelmed, developing mental discipline to handle information that arrived as pure knowledge rather than words or images, understanding how to interpret what they learned and translate it into forms that normal people could comprehend. Camilla had accessed more than 20 different artifacts. Each one revealed different aspects of the archive: historical information, scientific knowledge, philosophical insights. The cumulative effect was transformative. She understood the universe differently now, saw patterns and connections that would have been invisible before. But the training had also taught her restraint, how to access the archive without becoming lost in it, how to maintain her own identity and purpose despite the flood of knowledge. Hartford had been right about the danger. Several times during training, she had felt herself slipping, losing track of who she was in the vast ocean of information. Only Hartford's guidance had brought her back. Now she was ready to begin the process of helping humanity access that same knowledge safely. "Ladies and gentlemen," Camilla began, her voice carrying clearly through the conference hall, "what I'm about to show you will challenge everything you believe about human history, everything you've been taught about humanity's origin and purpose. I ask that you listen completely before asking questions. What you're going to learn is real, verified by multiple independent sources, and will fundamentally change how we understand ourselves." The screens behind her came to life, showing images of the artifacts in detail. Close-up photographs that revealed the molecular encoding Hartford had described. Scientific analysis that confirmed the impossibility of their creation, given historical technological limitations. "These artifacts have existed throughout human history," Camilla continued. "Some are famous objects that have been studied for centuries. Others are unknown items that were hidden or lost. What connects them all is technology that shouldn't exist: molecular data storage, information encoding that predates human scientific understanding by thousands of years." She explained the archive, the network of knowledge embedded in the artifacts, the fact that humans could access this information directly through physical contact. She showed video of herself accessing Marie Curie's ring, documenting the experience as clearly as possible. The journalists were silent, some looking skeptical, others fascinated. Camilla continued methodically, presenting evidence piece by piece. Historical records, scientific analysis, testimony from experts who had examined the artifacts independently. Then she addressed the most important question, the one that everyone would ask: who created these artifacts? Who placed them throughout human history, knowing we would eventually find them and learn what they contained? The screen changed, showing an artist's rendering based on information from the archive. Beings that looked almost human but subtly different, taller, more refined, eyes that suggested vast intelligence. They called themselves the Founders, Camilla explained. A species that existed long before humanity. They created us deliberately, designed us with specific traits that other intelligent species lack. They gave us imagination, creativity, the capacity for irrational thought and emotional decision-making. They made us different on purpose. She let that statement hang in the air for a moment before continuing. The reason is simple. The galaxy was stagnating, dominated by species that evolved naturally to favor logic and efficiency, civilizations that were predictable and ordered. The Founders believed the universe needed disruption, needed a species that would break patterns and force change. So they created humanity and placed us on Earth to see what would happen. The reaction was immediate. Journalists began shouting questions, some angry demanding proof, others excited recognizing the implications. Camilla waited for the noise to die down before continuing. "I know this is difficult to accept," she said, "that humanity isn't natural evolution, that we're designed, that our entire existence serves a purpose we didn't choose, but the evidence is overwhelming. These artifacts exist. The archive is real. The knowledge they contain can be verified independently by anyone willing to access them." She gestured to Marcus, who activated another display. This one showed a schedule of upcoming opportunities for researchers to examine the artifacts. Protocols for safe access, guidelines for interpreting the information. The Crown has decided to make these artifacts available for study, Camilla announced. Under controlled conditions, researchers from any institution can examine them, can access the archive themselves, can verify everything I'm telling you. We're not asking you to accept this on faith. We're providing evidence and access. The questions came rapidly after that. Camilla answered them as best she could, supported by data Marcus provided. She acknowledged uncertainty about some details, admitted there was still much they didn't understand, but she remained firm on the central facts. The artifacts were real. The archive existed. Humanity had been created deliberately. After 2 hours, the conference ended. Camilla left the stage exhausted but satisfied. The disclosure had begun. Within hours, news organizations across human space would be broadcasting this information. Within days, researchers would be requesting access to the artifacts. Within weeks, humanity would be debating what it meant to be a designed species. Hartford met her backstage, along with several other Royal Guard members who had provided security for the conference. "Well done," Hartford said quietly. "That was exactly the right approach. Factual, evidence-based, acknowledging uncertainty while being clear about the core truth." "Exactly what we needed. What happens now?" Camilla asked. "Now humanity reacts," Hartford said. "Some will embrace this knowledge. Others will reject it violently. There will be protests, religious debates, political upheaval. But the information is out. It can't be suppressed or controlled anymore. Humanity will have to deal with the truth." Marcus joined them, looking worried. "I'm already seeing responses on the networks. Some people are calling this a hoax. Others are calling it blasphemy. A few are threatening violence against anyone involved with the disclosure." "Expected," Hartford said calmly. "Any major revelation faces resistance. But the evidence will speak for itself. As more researchers access the artifacts and confirm the information independently, skepticism will fade. The truth will become undeniable." Over the following months, that prediction proved accurate. Initial reactions were chaotic. Religious leaders struggled to reconcile the founders with traditional beliefs about divine creation. Politicians argued about implications for sovereignty and human rights. Various groups claimed the artifacts for themselves or demanded they be destroyed. But gradually, as researchers confirmed the existence of the archive and verified the information it contained, acceptance grew. Universities established programs to study the artifacts safely. Protocols were developed for accessing the archive without psychological harm. The knowledge began spreading carefully through human civilization. Camilla continued her work, traveling to colonies and stations across human space. She helped establish training centers where people could learn to access the archive. She wrote extensively about the artifacts, creating educational materials that made the information accessible. Marcus worked on technical documentation, creating databases of archive knowledge organized by topic and complexity. He helped develop tools that would allow researchers to search the archive more effectively, finding specific information without being overwhelmed by the complete network. A year after the conference, Hartford contacted Camilla with new information. They met at Ashford House in the same chamber where she had first seen the full collection of artifacts. "The collective has responded to the disclosure," Hartford said without preamble, "not with military action but with communication. They've requested formal diplomatic contact for the first time in 50 years. "What do they want?" Camilla asked. "To negotiate," Hartford replied. "They're finally acknowledging that they can't eliminate or control humanity, that we're too unpredictable, too adaptable. Now that we have access to the archive, we're becoming even more dangerous to their ordered civilization. They want to establish protocols, boundaries, ways to coexist without conflict." "Do you think they're sincere?" Marcus asked. Hartford considered the question.